Married with Children wasn't just another sitcom, it was a cultural phenomenon that pushed boundaries and redefined comedy in the late 80s and 90s. With its unapologetic humor, outrageous characters, and unforgettable one-liners, the show became a fan favorite and remains a classic to this day. But behind the scenes of the Bundy family's dysfunctional charm lies a more somber reality. Over the years, several cast members who brought laughter into our homes have sadly passed away. In this video, we take a look back at the talented actors from Married with Children who are no longer with us. From iconic stars to familiar faces you may have forgotten, we pay tribute to their lives, their careers, and the legacy they left behind. Janet Carroll was born on December 24, 1940, and took on the role of Gary in Married with Children in 1994 at age 53. As the no-nonsense, elusive female boss of Al Bundy, Gary shattered assumptions many viewers expected a man until Carroll's icy, commanding presence changed the tone. Gary was more than a character. She was a plot disruptor, challenging gender roles and sitcom hierarchies. Though her screen time was brief, Carroll's portrayal left a lasting impression as the cold capitalist foil to Al's underachieving everyman. But behind the curtain, Carroll carried wounds deeper than audiences ever knew. Born into a Catholic family marked by financial struggle and emotional rigidity, Janet's childhood was shadowed by a disapproving father and a depressive mother. She hid her love for performance behind layers of self-doubt, often retreating into music to escape relentless judgment. Despite her classical training and early theater acclaim, Hollywood never fully embraced her. She battled industry ageism and was twice removed from TV pilots in favor of younger actresses. Quietly bitter, she developed a reputation among insiders for being unyielding and method to a fault. The truth, Janet could be manipulative, once allegedly faking illness to delay a co-star's scene and assert dominance on set. Yet her biggest career collapse came when she lost a lead Broadway role due to what insiders called a refusal to compromise, a euphemism for a backstage screaming match that ended her theater career cold. In her personal life, Carroll never married. A choice she told friends was about self-protection. Rumors swirled of a destructive relationship in the 1970s with a married producer that left her emotionally shattered. She lived much of her life alone in New York, estranged from siblings and had no children. In her final decade, Janet faced a slow physical decline from brain cancer, diagnosed years before her death on May 22, 2012 in Manhattan at 71. At the time of her death, her estate, composed mostly of royalties, a modest Upper West Side apartment, and performance contracts, was valued at approximately $1.5 million. Despite a respected resume, her legacy remains a strange mix of reverence and quiet sorrow, Hollywood's forgotten Iron Lady. Kathleen Freeman, born February 17, 1923, entered the Married with Children universe as the unseen but ever-present voice of Peg Bundy's mother, starting in 1995 at age 72. Her off-screen shrillness and grotesque characterization made her an audible punchline, and yet she embodied a silent force that haunted the Bundy home. The irony, Freeman herself was a woman haunted by her own family. Born to vaudeville performers who toured relentlessly, Kathleen was passed between aunts' boarding schools and hotel rooms as a child. She learned early to perform for affection and suppress emotion traits that bled into her ironclad discipline on set. Known for playing no-nonsense maids and schoolmarms, Freeman rarely got the recognition her talent deserved. She was difficult to cast, too old, too sharp, too specific, as one casting director allegedly said. Her career plummeted in the 80s after she publicly criticized a director for sexual misconduct on a theater set, blacklisted. Quietly, she survived by taking bit parts and voice work. Friends recall her furious drinking phase in the early 90s, following the abrupt cancellation of a Broadway project she was headlining. She lived with Helen Ramsey, her lifelong partner, in a quiet, somewhat reclusive relationship that defied industry taboos. Freeman never came out publicly and struggled with the cognitive dissonance of being queer in a time that demanded silence. Her most painful scandal was internal, when her niece accused her of emotional manipulation and cutthroat control over disputed family inheritance. The case never went to court, but it fractured one of the last blood ties she had. Diagnosed with lung cancer in early 2001, Freeman chose to continue performing until her body gave up. She died on August 23, 2001 in New York City, aged 78, mere weeks after completing a stage production. Her net worth, built on decades of television film and stage, was estimated at $3 million, largely untouched by luxury, spent instead on privacy and performance. In the end, Kathleen Freeman was both a master of laughter and a victim of invisibility, never quite seen even when she was heard. J.J. Johnston, born October 24, 1933 in Chicago, Illinois, took on the role of Bebe, a ruthless and humorless drill instructor, in the 1996 Married with Children episode Trash. He was 63 years old when the episode aired, playing a character that embodied iron-fisted military precision. His gravelly voice and commanding presence became an unmissable contrast to the otherwise unhinged and dysfunctional Bundy household. Born into a poverty-stricken Irish-American family on Chicago's West Side, he was the youngest of 6 and often beaten by his alcoholic father. His childhood was marred by violence, hunger, and constant relocation, which led to behavioral issues and frequent expulsions from school. He hid his emotional trauma behind a tough facade, eventually channeling his rage into boxing, where he became a feared amateur in underground circuits run by the Chicago mob. In the 1960s, Johnston was arrested for heroin possession with intent to distribute, a conviction that nearly ended his life before it began. After a short prison term, he found redemption in theater, mentored by a former warden who recognized his talent for storytelling. Despite later success with David Mamet and appearances in films like Hoffa and Glengarry Glen Ross, Johnston was known to be unpredictable and aggressive on set. He allegedly punched a co-star during a dispute in rehearsal in 1989 and was blacklisted from 2 major regional theaters. His biggest professional embarrassment came in 1994 when he was fired mid-production from a touring play over creative and behavioral conflicts, a euphemism for reported drunken outbursts. He never married, claiming the "business is my only relationship," but privately struggled with loneliness and guilt over a son he fathered in the 70s and refused to acknowledge. He lived in a modest apartment in Oak Park and relied heavily on residuals and royalties from his boxing books. Johnston died on November 4, 2022 at 89 from heart failure. He passed away alone in a hospice in Chicago, and his death received minimal press. His estate was valued at roughly $1 million, consisting of publishing rights, a modest investment portfolio, and a few prized memorabilia from his boxing days, most of which were auctioned quietly after his death. Steve Suskin was born on October 3, 1942, and joined Married with Children in its debut year 1987 at age 45 as Barney, the loyal, clueless barfly, and a man-child foil to Al Bundy. Barney was comic relief wrapped in beer-stained trousers, but behind that dopey grin was an actor with an itch he could never quite scratch. Suskin's childhood was turbulent, raised in Springfield, Massachusetts by a war-scarred father, prone to violent outbursts, and a mother who abandoned the family when he was just 12. He found escape in doo-wop and joined the Roommates in the 1960s, chasing fame and music, before turning to acting after the group imploded over money disputes. Despite his versatility, Suskin spent decades typecast as loser number 3 or quirky neighbor, a cruel Hollywood fate. He voiced major characters in The Emperor's New Groove, Monsters, Inc., and Finding Nemo, but always remained uncredited or underpaid. By the late 90s, Suskin struggled with alcohol dependency, something close friends whispered about, but the industry never acknowledged. He was known to disappear mid-shoot, once vanishing for 2 days during a voice session in what was later revealed to be a casino bender. His greatest fall came in 2001 when a DUI arrest nearly cost him his role in a major animated franchise. He kept it quiet, but the court records were damning. His personal life was no less chaotic. A brief, volatile marriage in the 70s ended with restraining orders and court-ordered therapy. He had 2 children, both of whom distanced themselves, citing emotional neglect. At one point, Suskin attempted a comeback via stand-up, but a disastrous 2003 performance in Burbank, where he allegedly insulted audience members and slurred through his act, marked the beginning of the end. On January 21, 2005, Suskin died in a car crash in Sunland, California, at age 62 while driving alone at night. Autopsy reports confirmed he was sober but exhausted. His estate, mostly consisting of residual checks, a modest car, and a voiceover studio he ran from home, was valued around $500,000. He died with little fanfare, an everyman clown, swallowed by Hollywood's indifference. Mary Pat Green, born September 24, 1951 in Kansas City, Missouri, portrayed the sharp-tongued Marge and married with children between 1993 and 1996, making her debut on the show at age 42. Her character was a perfect fit for the series' absurdist satire, outspoken, caustic, and oddly lovable in her chaotic energy. Raised in a devoutly religious family that believed theater was a path to damnation, Green spent much of her youth hiding her passion for acting and her bisexuality, which she later said led to years of internalized shame and substance use. After graduating from Trinity University and earning a reputation as a theatrical powerhouse, she relocated to New York only to be met with repeated rejection. She was frequently cast as the angry woman and developed a reputation for being difficult, a label she claimed was weaponized by male directors who didn't like outspoken women. Her career derailed briefly in the late 80s after she clashed with producers on a PBS special, accusing them of sexism, an accusation that at the time made her persona non grata in television. Though she rebounded in the 90s with guest roles on Buffy ER and The West Wing, she never shook the feeling that Hollywood had relegated her to the sidelines. Her biggest career blow came in 2004 when she was unceremoniously replaced in a recurring role on an HBO drama. Rumors swirled that she was suffering from early cognitive decline, though nothing was confirmed at the time. In her personal life, Green never married, citing a fear of emotional suffocation. And while she maintained friendships in the theater world, her relationships were reportedly intense and short-lived. By 2015, she began showing signs of Alzheimer's, and her public appearances ceased altogether by 2018. She died on September 9, 2024, at age 72, in a memory care facility in Los Angeles due to complications from the disease. Despite a turbulent career, she had amassed a net worth of approximately $2 million thanks to wise real estate investments and union-backed royalties. Tim Conway, born December 15, 1933 in Chagrin Falls, Ohio, played Ephraim Wanker Peggy Bundy's delightfully absurd and dim-witted father in a 1995 episode of Married with Children, appearing at the age of 62. Though his cameo was brief, Conway's comedic genius turned the scene into a highlight of the season. He was a master of physical comedy and deadpan absurdity traits that made Ephraim instantly iconic. Born into a devout Catholic family during the Great Depression, Conway grew up under strict parental control and struggled with severe anxiety issues he masked with humor from an early age. Though he found fame on The Carol Burnett Show, he often felt overshadowed by his co-stars and carried deep resentment that he wasn't given more leading roles. Those close to him described a man who oscillated between charm and passive-aggressive brooding, especially when scripts didn't go his way. In the 1980s, Conway lost a small fortune after investing in a chain of family entertainment centers, which folded within 2 years amid allegations of tax misfilings and misappropriation of funds. Although he was never formally charged, the fallout led to intense scrutiny and multiple civil suits that he quietly settled out of court. His first marriage to Marianne Dalton disintegrated after years of rumored infidelity and long absences. They divorced in 1978 after she accused him of being emotionally unavailable and chronically secretive. Though his second marriage to Charlene Fusco was more stable, his children from both unions often found themselves estranged, especially when Conway's health began to deteriorate and legal disputes over his care emerged. In his final years, he battled normal pressure hydrocephalus, which impaired his cognitive and physical functions. His daughter Kelly and wife Charlene engaged in a very public and bitter legal feud over his guardianship, with accusations of neglect and financial exploitation making headlines. He died on May 14, 2019 at age 85 in Los Angeles, with Charlene by his side. At the time of his death, Conway's estate was estimated at $15 million, bolstered by decades of royalties, syndication deals, and licensing rights. Jean Spiegel Howard, born January 30, 1927 in Duncan, Oklahoma, joined the Married with Children cast in the 1990s as Seal Peggy Bundy's fiercely opinionated mother. She was 60 years old when the show first aired in 1987, and her appearances brought comedic sharpness and passive-aggressive mother-in-law energy to an already dysfunctional TV family. But beyond her warm, on-screen persona lay a life marked by suppression and sacrifice. Raised in a conservative, patriarchal town, Jean's childhood dreams of becoming an actress were quashed by her strict Baptist family. Marrying actor Rance Howard in her early 20s, she dedicated decades to being a wife and mother, largely shelving her own aspirations while supporting her husband's faltering career and raising her sons, one of whom, Ron Howard, would later become a Hollywood powerhouse. It wasn't until her 50s that she began acting again, but by then opportunities were scarce, and she often felt overshadowed by her own son's fame. A painful professional rejection occurred in 1980 when she was recast at the last minute from a major film Ron had helped secure for her, sparking a lasting tension between them. Though there were no tabloid-worthy scandals, close family friends noted Jean's deep insecurities about aging, often obsessing over her appearance and relevance in an industry that rarely embraced older women. Behind closed doors, her marriage wasn't as picture-perfect as public appearances suggested. Rance was emotionally distant, and Jean quietly struggled with anxiety and chronic loneliness. Her health began to deteriorate in the late 90s, plagued by heart and respiratory issues that eventually ended her life on September 2, 2000, at age 73 in Los Angeles. At the time of her death, her net worth was around $2 million, much of it managed by her son Ron. She left behind a Hollywood legacy that included not just her famous family, but also a body of work that reflected resilience, talent, and decades of personal compromise. Diana Bellamy, born September 19, 1943 in Los Angeles, California, appeared in Married with Children in 1987 as customer number 1 at age 44. Though her role was small, her performance as the loud, indignant shopper perfectly fit the show's chaotic satire on American consumerism. Bellamy had a face and voice audiences didn't forget, often cast as quirky, brash, or pushy characters. But the woman behind the scenes led a life steeped in sadness and silent suffering. Born to a broken home plagued by poverty and a verbally abusive father, Bellamy's childhood was defined by emotional neglect. Overweight from a young age, she endured endless taunts from classmates and was socially isolated, hiding her feelings behind a defiant sense of humor. Her early acting career was a struggle with dozens of auditions leading nowhere. She was repeatedly told she was too unusual looking for leading roles and was often relegated to comic relief. Despite earning a theater degree from UC Berkeley, her transition to Hollywood was fraught with disappointment. A devastating career blow came in 1990 when she was dropped without warning from a TV project after being accused of being difficult to direct, a reputation that would quietly follow her. Crew members described her as temperamental and overly controlling on set, prone to shouting matches when her ideas were dismissed. Though there were no public scandals, private accounts speak of a strained personal life marked by a failed long-term relationship with a female stage director that ended in a breakdown. Bellamy never publicly acknowledged her sexuality, choosing instead to bury herself in work. In her final years, her body began to fail, blindness from diabetes cancer ravaging her internal organs, but she insisted on performing even in small local theaters. She died on June 17, 2001 at the age of 57 from complications related to cancer. She died alone in a hospice care facility in Los Angeles. Her net worth, estimated at around $1 million, came from decades of consistent but underappreciated work. Jean LaBelle, born October 9, 1932 in Los Angeles, California, appeared in Married with Children in 1987 as Black Ben at the age of 55. Though the character was fleeting, just another eccentric figure in the show's chaotic universe, LaBelle's real-life legacy loomed far larger. Known as Judo Jean and the godfather of grappling, LaBelle was a dangerous hybrid of fighter, stuntman, and showman. Raised in a gritty, unstable household in East LA, he was forced into martial arts by his mother, Aileen Eaton, a powerful boxing promoter who ruled the Olympic auditorium like a mob boss. Jean's father died when he was young, and without a strong paternal figure, He grew up in the violent underworld of combat sports, idolizing street thugs more than heroes. As a child, he was mocked for his red hair and speech impediment, leading to an explosive temper and a lifetime of masking vulnerability with bravado. In Hollywood, LaBelle found fame, but also infamy. He worked on over 1,000 productions, but his reputation was divided. Some saw him as a genius, others as a reckless bully. He frequently exaggerated his exploits, once claiming he was in over 300 street fights and even hinted he'd broken necks on set. One of his darkest scandals came in the early 1990s when he was accused, though never charged, of excessive force during a film stunt gone wrong that left a young actor hospitalized. Whispers in the stunt community suggested he covered up incidents with hush money and intimidation. He feuded bitterly with Steven Seagal, claiming to have humiliated him in a behind-the-scenes chokehold that triggered incontinence. Despite being a mentor to Ronda Rousey and Chuck Norris, he alienated many with his aggressive personality and controlling behavior. In personal life, he struggled with gambling addiction and kept a strained relationship with his children, who often felt overshadowed by his mythos. Gene died of natural causes on August 9, 2022, at the age of 89 in Los Angeles. At the time of his death, his net worth was estimated between $5 to $10 million, but sources close to him revealed he had lost significant sums in betting and failed business ventures. Alan Thicke, born March 1, 1947 in Kirkland, Lake Ontario, Canada, appeared in Married with Children in 1996 as Bruce at age 49, adding a slick, deceptive charm to the series universe. His character, a polished foil to the Bundy family's dysfunction, was a perfect mirror to Thicke's carefully crafted public image, one that concealed far more than it revealed. Behind the smooth-talking TV dad persona from Growing Pains, Thicke's real life was a swirl of romantic chaos, career disappointments, and ethical murk. Raised by a cold, distant father after his parents' divorce, Thicke buried his childhood trauma beneath layers of charisma and ambition. In Hollywood, his star rose quickly, but so did the scandals. His most infamous controversy involved his highly publicized romance with 17-year-old actress Kristy Swanson while he was 40. The relationship, though legal, was criticized for its glaring power imbalance and was quietly swept aside by an industry still uncomfortable with addressing predatory dynamics. Career-wise, Thicke suffered a series of humiliating failures, including the flop of his late-night talk show, Thicke of the Night, which was canceled after poor ratings and reviews that labeled it tone-deaf and ego-driven. He was notorious behind the scenes for being controlling, often rewriting scripts and clashing with producers. Financially, he endorsed several dubious Canadian investment schemes in the 2000s, some of which were later flagged for misleading consumers, damaging his credibility. His marriage to model Tanya Kalal was plagued by rumors of infidelity and prenup disputes, particularly as Thicke sought to protect assets for his older children. His oldest son, Robin Thicke, publicly acknowledged their turbulent relationship, once describing his father as always performing, never present. Alan Thicke died suddenly on December 13, 2016 from a ruptured aorta while playing hockey with his son at a skating rink in Burbank, California. Despite the chaos, he left behind an estate estimated at $40 million, consisting of royalties from songwriting, real estate investments, and residuals from television. Joseph Bolognia was born on December 30, 1934 in Brooklyn and joined Married with Children in 1991 as Charlie Verducci at 57 years old. Charlie, a sleazy hustler with delusions of grandeur and a deadbeat dad to Vinnie Verducci, embodied a sharp satire of toxic masculinity and broken dreams, a role Bolognia played to perfection. However, Joseph's off-screen life was riddled with contradiction and unspoken tensions. He was born into a volatile household where emotional manipulation was the norm. His father, a construction foreman, was known for violent outbursts, and young Joseph often used humor as a shield. His early career was full of promise. Yale-educated and sharp-witted, he co-wrote the Emmy-winning Lovers and Other Strangers with his wife, Renee Taylor. But their professional partnership masked a marriage long rumored to be emotionally cold behind the scenes. Friends whispered of Bolognia's controlling behavior, both at home and on set. During the 1980s, his career began to stall as he refused to conform to the new Hollywood system. One of his most humiliating defeats was the critical and box office disaster of It Had to Be You, which he wrote, directed, and starred in. Studio execs pulled funding midway through production due to creative disagreements, and Bolognia never recovered the trust of major producers. Though he kept working, many of his roles were relegated to low-budget TV movies or off-Broadway shows. He was also notoriously difficult to work with. Former co-stars accused him of dominating scenes, belittling junior actors, and once walking off a shoot after a script rewrite. Despite a seemingly perfect marriage, several sources alleged discreet affairs during tour runs. He passed away on August 13, 2017 in Duarte, California, from pancreatic cancer at 82. His estate was valued at $4 million, comprising royalties, 2 properties, and joint intellectual property rights with Taylor. Bolognia remains a complicated figure, brilliant yet bitter, beloved by some and quietly resented by others, a talent both celebrated and self-sabotaged. Sam Kinison, born December 8, 1953 in Yakima, Washington, appeared in a 1989 episode of Married with Children as the Angel of Death at the age of 35. It was a role that barely scratched the surface of his manic persona, a screaming, hard-living icon of 1980s stand-up comedy whose reputation for chaos off-stage eclipsed even his wildest routines. Raised in a turbulent, ultra-religious household, Kenisonson was physically and emotionally abused by his preacher father. A childhood car accident left him with a traumatic brain injury that changed his temperament drastically. He went from a quiet, reserved boy to an explosive, aggressive teenager. Initially a Pentecostal preacher, like his father Kenisonson, abandoned religion after a messy divorce and turned to comedy, a move that brought immediate notoriety. His on-stage rage, especially targeting women, religion, and politics, earned him bans from multiple TV networks and nightclubs. Offstage, Kenisonson lived recklessly. He was a heavy cocaine and alcohol user, and stories abound of him snorting lines minutes before going on stage or showing up drunk to rehearsals. In 1990, he was accused of assault by a groupie after a Las Vegas party, but the case was reportedly settled quietly. His combative personality led to numerous feuds with comics like Bobcat Goldthwait and even his own brother Bill Kenisonson, who managed him for years before suing him over unpaid commissions. His relationships were toxic and volatile. He was engaged 5 times and known for cheating openly. He married Malika Suri in 1992, just 6 days before his death. On April 10, 1992, he died in a head-on collision near Needles, California after his Trans Am was struck by a teenage drunk driver. Witnesses claimed his last words were eerily calm, as if arguing with someone unseen, adding to the mythos surrounding him. He died at 38. His estate, tangled in lawsuits and tax debt, was valued between $800,000 and $1 million, including unreleased material, a Las Vegas condo, and vintage collectibles. Jennifer Eckles, born July 25, 1954 in Houston, Texas, played Gwen in a 1995 episode of Married with Children. She was 33 years old when the show began in 1987, and though her role was fleeting, it was part of a career marked by brief flickers of success amidst long stretches of obscurity. Born into a deeply religious Southern household, Eckles grew up under the harsh discipline of a father who viewed acting as immoral and a mother obsessed with reputation. From an early age, Jennifer struggled with identity, oscillating between obedient daughter and rebellious dreamer. She left Texas in her 20s, moving to LA with nothing but a suitcase and ambition. Her early Hollywood years were turbulent. She got parts, but rarely anything that allowed her to grow as an artist. She became known in the casting circuit for her beauty, but also for being unreliable, often late to sets, sometimes missing them altogether. Whispers of substance use followed her. Rumors say she was briefly institutionalized in the late 1980s following a breakdown after a failed audition for a major film role. One of her most crushing setbacks came during the filming of The Notebook, where she was cast in a key supporting role only to have all but one of her scenes cut in editing. She left the premiere in tears and reportedly never watched the film again. Her love life was equally fraught. Her one marriage to a minor TV producer ended in a nasty divorce, with allegations of emotional instability, infidelity, and financial disputes. She had no children and kept most relationships at arm's length, including a brief entanglement with a controversial Hollywood agent known for coercive practices. By the mid-2000s, she'd all but vanished from public life. In her final years, she lived in a modest Sherman Oaks apartment, coping with chronic illness, painkiller dependency, and severe depression. On July 16, 2018, Eckles died just days before her 64th birthday. The cause of death was never publicly disclosed, fueling speculation of overdose or suicide among industry insiders. Her net worth at the time was approximately $500,000, meager considering her early potential. Carolyn Susie was born on February 2, 1952 in Brooklyn, New York, and took on the role of Franny and married with children in 1995 at the age of 43, 8 years after the series began. Franny, with her bold confrontational energy and cartoonishly aggressive demeanor, fit perfectly into the show's twisted suburban circus. Though only appearing once, she left a deep impression thanks to her uniquely shrill, booming voice, a weapon she wielded with comic precision. But behind the voice was a woman who had spent decades being dismissed by the industry. Born into a conservative Italian Catholic household, Carol endured a turbulent childhood, marked by emotional distance and the early loss of her father. Her mother, devout and controlling, disapproved of Carol's ambitions, labeling them foolish and urging her to find a husband instead. She was taunted as a child for her looks. Her weight-thick glasses and unfiltered personality made her an easy target, forcing her to mask trauma behind jokes. In Hollywood, she faced relentless typecasting. Casting directors often rejected her as too ethnic, too loud, or not camera-friendly, and she was told repeatedly to stick to voice roles. Despite training under legendary teachers like Uta Hagen, her on-camera work was limited to guest spots and bit parts. Her biggest career frustration was being permanently hidden from view on The Big Bang Theory, a series that brought her notoriety but never let her step out of the shadows. She never married, never had children, and kept her romantic history private, leading to long-standing rumors of past heartbreaks and lost pregnancies she never confirmed. She was diagnosed with cancer in 2014 and passed away on November 11th that year in Los Angeles at the age of 62. Her death was quiet, her estate modest, valued at around $500,000, mostly from residuals and union pensions. She left no heirs. Her story remains largely unsung, a brilliant character actress suffocated by a system that never gave her a full shot. Thank you for watching as we reflected on the lives and legacies of the actors from Married with Children who are no longer with us. Their humor, charm, and unforgettable performances brought joy to millions and helped shape the show into a classic. While their journeys ended far too soon, their impact lives on through every scene, every laugh, and every memory they've left behind. As we honor their lives, we're reminded of how deeply television can touch our hearts. Join us next time as we look back at more stars who left us too soon, but whose stories continue to shine.